The sword. No one dared to touch. The sky above was filled with two suns. The ground below was cracked, dry, and red like blood. Jack Walker, a human soldier, walked slowly across the alien wasteland. His uniform was torn. His face was dirty. He was tired, hungry, and alone. His ship had crashed 3 days ago. Everyone else was either dead or missing. He had no map, no radio, and no water. All he had was a broken blaster and his backpack. Jack didn't know where he was, but he kept walking. Giving up was not in his nature. As he moved through the strange desert, he saw something far ahead. Tall stone pillars rising from the dust. They looked ancient, broken and forgotten, a ruined temple. Jack's tired legs moved faster. Maybe there was shelter, maybe answers. The temple was quiet, almost too quiet. Carvings covered the walls. They showed pictures of tall alien women, holding swords, fighting monsters, and leading armies. It looked like this place once belonged to a powerful warrior clan. But now, it was just a graveyard of stone. In the center of the temple, something stood out. A large sword, nearly as tall as Jack himself, was buried in a stone pedestal. The sword shimmered faintly with blue energy. Strange alien runes were carved around the base. Jack stepped closer and read the faded warning in English. Only the chosen may lift the blade, touch it, and be bound forever. He laughed a little. Yeah, right, like I believe in space magic. He looked around. No one was here. He reached out, mostly to satisfy his curiosity. The metal was cold at first, but then it warmed in his hands. A faint hum filled the air. The sword glowed bright blue, and then it lifted. Jack gasped. The sword came free like it had been waiting for him. As soon as he held it up, a pulse of light shot into the sky. The entire temple shook for a moment, and the runes began to glow. On the walls, Jack didn't know what just happened. But one thing was clear. This sword was not ordinary. Suddenly, he heard a sound behind him. Footsteps. He turned fast, holding the sword tight. A tall figure stood at the entrance of the temple. She wore silver armor, and her skin was light violet. Her long, dark hair blew in the wind. Her eyes locked onto the blade in his hand. You lifted it, she said coldly. Her voice was firm, proud, and dangerous. Jack blinked. Yeah. Is that a problem? She stepped forward. That sword is sacred. It belongs to my bloodline. Only the rightful mate of my clan may hold it. Jack frowned. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Wait, mate? She ignored his confusion. By our law, the one who lifts that sword is bound to me. Jack lowered the blade a little. You're kidding, right? I do not joke, she said, walking around him slowly like a predator. You have touched my family's sacred weapon. The temple has accepted you. That means the bonding ritual has begun. Jack laughed nervously. I just wanted a weapon to fight off those flying lizards outside. She didn't smile. You are now part of the Varelian rite. The sword has chosen, and now I must test you. Jack sighed. I didn't ask for this. She stepped closer. Neither did I. Then, without warning, she placed her hand on his chest. A glowing symbol appeared beneath her palm, a swirling mark just above his heart. It burned for a second, then faded into his skin. What the hell was that? Jack asked, stepping back. Our bond mark, she said calmly. You cannot run now. The trials begin at sunrise. She turned and began walking away. Wait, who are you? He called out. She paused, then looked back. My name is Lysera, last daughter of the Varelian bloodline. You, human, are now my problem. And with that, she disappeared into the shadows of the ruins, leaving Jack alone, still holding the sword that no one dared to touch. The warrior princess appears. The temple was no longer silent. After Jack lifted the sword, strange things began to happen. The air inside the ruins felt heavier, almost electric. Runes on the stone walls blinked with dim light, pulsing slowly, like a sleeping heart waking up. Somewhere deep inside, a whisper echoed. Not a sound Jack could understand, but a presence he could feel. He sat with his back against a broken pillar, the heavy sword lying beside him. His hand still tingled from holding it. What had he done? He just wanted to survive, not get involved in some alien ritual. He looked at the glowing mark on his chest. It wasn't just a scar. It was alive. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept through the ruined temple. Dust rose and the faint sound of footsteps approached again, soft, yet sharp. Jack stood up quickly, grabbing the sword. Out of the shadow stepped the same violet-skinned woman from before. But this time she wasn't wearing her helmet. Her sharp silver eyes looked directly into his. Her face was both beautiful and dangerous, like a storm behind a calm sky. "I thought you would run," she said. Jack shrugged. "Thought about it, but I don't know where I'd go." She stepped closer. Her armor shimmered with the same blue light as the sword. "Then you are wiser than I expected, or more foolish." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Look, I didn't mean to lift your sacred blade or bond myself to anyone. I was just trying to not get eaten by space lizards." Her expression didn't change. "The sword does not care what you meant. It only answers truth." Jack was confused. Truth? The blade chooses only those with a pure heart and unshaken will. It waited centuries in silence, and it chose you. He looked at the sword. "You make it sound like a fairy tale." "No," she said. "This is a war story, and you just became part of it." She walked slowly around him, inspecting him like a commander inspects a soldier. "Do you even know whose sword you hold?" Jack shook his head. "That is the heartsteel of Virelia, a weapon bound to my bloodline for 10 generations. It cannot be lifted by outsiders, not unless—" She stopped. "Unless what?" "Unless the outsider is fated to become my bonded mate," she finished. Jack took a step back. "Okay, I really didn't sign up for that." "Yet you carry the mark," she said, pointing to his chest. "Our laws are clear. If you carry the mark and wield the blade, you must complete the bond, or die in the trials." "Trials?" Jack said. "You mean like tests?" She nodded. 3 trials to prove your soul, mind, and strength. If you fail, the bond breaks. But your life ends with it." Jack groaned. "That's a bit extreme." "This is not your world, human," she said firmly. "Our traditions are older than your species." He sighed and looked around. "And if I pass these trials?" She paused. "Then you become part of my clan. My partner." Jack studied her carefully now. Beneath the hard words, he noticed a strange sadness in her eyes, like she wasn't just angry about the sword, but about something else. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Lysera," she said after a moment. "Last daughter of the Virelian High Blood. I am heir to a broken throne, protector of a dying people." "Sounds lonely," Jack said. She blinked in surprise, then turned her face away. "I do not need pity." "I didn't say you did." Silence passed between them. Then she nodded toward the temple entrance. "Come. We start your first trial at Moonfall. You must walk the path of ash and prove your will." Jack grabbed the sword. "You sure I don't get a training session first?" She smirked, just a little. "The sword will teach you if it wants you alive." Before she turned to leave again, she added, "You may not have asked for this, human, but fate has spoken. You carry more than metal now. You carry my future." And with that, she vanished into the growing twilight. Jack looked down at the glowing sword and whispered to himself, "What the hell did I get myself into?" Trials of honor and fire. Jack woke to the sound of fire, not the kind that burned buildings or trees. This fire was alive. It moved in rings across the ground, forming glowing patterns that pulsed under the dirt like veins. As he opened his eyes, he realized he was no longer in the temple. He was standing in a stone arena surrounded by tall alien statues with empty eyes. The sky above was dark now, painted with stars he didn't recognize. The 2 moons of Virelia hung heavy in the sky, like watching gods. He wasn't alone. Lysera stood across the arena in a circle of flame. She wore no helmet now. Her armor had changed, lighter, made for speed and movement. Her face was calm but unreadable. "Where am I?" Jack asked, his voice echoing in the silent air. "You are inside the trial ring," Lysera said. "The first trial begins now. You must pass 3 tests before sunrise. If you fail even one, the bond will break, and the sword will consume you." "Consume me?" Jack frowned. "What does that even mean?" Lysera didn't answer. She stepped backward into the shadows, vanishing completely. Jack's sword glowed faintly in his hands. That's when he heard it, a rumble beneath the ground. A stone gate opened behind him, and something big stepped out. It looked like a beast made of metal and bone, standing on 4 legs with red light glowing from its joints. Its head had no eyes, only a mouth filled with rotating blades. It let out a deep mechanical growl, and the ground trembled. "Your first trial," a voice boomed from nowhere, "is to survive the Guardian of Flame. You have 5 minutes. Begin." Jack didn't wait. He ran. The beast charged after him, crushing stones beneath its heavy feet. Jack ducked behind a column, breathing fast, sword in hand. He didn't know how to fight something like this, but he knew how to stay alive. The sword pulsed again, then suddenly spoke. "Move left!" Jack jumped left just as a blade flew past his ear. His eyes widened. Did you just talk?" "I will guide, but you must swing. You must believe." Jack didn't have time to argue. He rolled forward and slashed the beast's leg. Sparks flew, but the blade didn't cut deep. The beast roared and kicked him back. Jack hit the ground hard. "Okay," he groaned. "We're doing this the hard way." He stood again, eyes focused. This time he waited for the beast to lunge. At the last moment he slid underneath and drove the sword into the soft wiring beneath its belly. The sword screamed with energy as it pierced through. The beast exploded into red flames and crumbled to pieces. Jack panted, sweat dripping down his face. "Trial 1 done," he muttered. The fire circles shifted again. The arena changed. Now he was standing in a narrow tunnel made of black stone. Voices whispered from the walls. His sword dimmed. "Jack," a voice called. "Can you hear me?" It was his sister. No, it couldn't be. She died years ago. But he could hear her, see her face. He stood frozen. "Come back to Earth," she said softly. "Let go. Stop fighting. You don't belong here." Jack felt his knees weaken. His heart slowed. "Do not listen," the sword warned. "This is the trial of the mind. Your fears, your pain, they will trick you." Tears formed in Jack's eyes. "She's gone. Why does it feel so real?" "Because your mind is where your enemy lives now. Defeat it." Jack shook his head. "No, I won't forget her. But I won't follow a lie." He stepped forward through the ghostly image of his sister. The walls screamed, and the tunnel collapsed behind him. When he stepped out, Lysera was waiting. "You passed," she said. Jack's hands were shaking. "I hate this planet." "One trial remains," she said. A mountain rose in the distance, glowing with molten rivers. "At dawn, you must walk across the path of fire. If you reach the end, the bond will be complete." Jack looked at the mountain and sighed. "Of course, a lava walk, why not?" Lysera stepped closer, her tone softer now. "Few make it this far. No outsider ever has." Jack stared at the rising fire. "I didn't come here to marry anyone," he said. "But now, I want to finish this. Not for your sword. For me." Lysera looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Then I'll see you at dawn, Flamewalker." The enemies within, the sword warned him, just a second too late. Jack felt the air shift behind him, cold and sharp like a whisper of death. He spun fast, raising the blade just in time to block a dagger aimed straight for his back. The steel clashed. Sparks flew and the enemy's cloak fell. It wasn't a monster, it wasn't a rival clan warrior. It was one of Lysera's own people. A young alien man in ceremonial armor stood before him. eyes filled with rage. The symbol of the Varelian clan burned on his shoulder, but it was scratched, crossed out. A mark of betrayal. You shouldn't be alive, the man growled. That sword was supposed to kill you, not bind you. Jack narrowed his eyes. Let me guess. You like the idea of being her mate? The man hissed, lunging again. Jack parried the strike and shoved him back with the flat of the glowing blade. I don't care about her, the assassin snapped. But if you finish the bond, she gets the throne. And I lose everything. Jack was still breathing hard from the last trial, his muscles sore and mind tired. But he didn't lower the sword. So this is about power, not love. The assassin grinned bitterly. It's always about power. Before he could strike again, a blur of violet dropped between them. Lysera landed in a crouch, blades drawn, her armor flashing like lightning. You disgrace the clan, she said, coldly. The clan is already dead, the assassin screamed. We're living in ruins, worshipping laws written by ghosts. He charged, but this time, Lysera didn't hold back. Her movements were like water and flame combined. In seconds, the traitor was on the ground, breathless, her blade at his throat. Jack stepped forward. So, how many more of your people want me dead? Lysera didn't answer. Her jaw clenched as she pressed the blade closer. But then she pulled back, letting the man live. Cowards don't die like warriors, she said. Let him crawl back and tell the others what happens to those who break sacred law. The assassin spat blood, then limped away into the darkness, vanishing among the rocks. Jack looked at Lysera. Why didn't you kill him? Because he was once my brother, she said quietly. Not by blood, but by battle. She turned, her eyes to him, tired, but strong. Now you see the truth. My clan isn't just broken, it's bleeding from within. They stood in silence for a moment. The firelight flickered around them, dancing on the sword's blade. Jack finally asked, Why didn't you tell me someone might try to kill me? Because if I did, she said, you might have run. Jack half smiled, still thinking about it. But then her expression changed. She looked past him toward the valley beyond. The trial grounds were quiet now, but something darker loomed. The last trial comes at dawn, Lysera said. But now, the final danger is not a test. It's real. What do you mean? She reached into her belt and pulled out a small glowing crystal. It showed a hologram, a ship descending from the sky, not part of the Varelian fleet. That is a war vessel from the Skarn Dominion. They followed your crash signal. They plan to wipe out what remains of my people. And you. Jack stared at the image. So now I'm not just marrying into royalty, I'm dragging my enemies with me. She nodded. Yes. And you must survive one more night, Jack Walker. Not because of the trial, but because the world will try to end you first. He gripped the sword tighter. Then let's not give it the chance. Lysera looked at him for a long time. Something in her eyes had changed. Not cold duty, not warrior pride. Something warmer. You fought my enemy. You passed my tests. And now, you stand beside me. Jack raised an eyebrow. Was that a compliment? She ignored him and walked ahead, calling over her shoulder. Come. If you're to become my mate tomorrow, you'll need to stay alive tonight. Bonded by firelight, rain began to fall, not water but silver dust that shimmered as it touched the ground. Jack had never seen anything like it. The alien night sky above them was alive with streaks of light, falling stars and a slow-moving aurora that painted the world in violet and blue. He stood at the edge of a cliff with Lysera beside him, the glowing sword resting between them. Below, the valley flickered with fire from a nearby village, what was left of her clan's once great stronghold. Tomorrow at dawn, the final trial would begin, but tonight there was silence. And questions. Where I come from, Jack said softly, watching the sky. We used to wish on falling stars. Lysera looked at him, confused. Wish? Yeah, he nodded. You'd close your eyes, make a hope, even if you knew it was just a rock burning up. She was quiet for a moment. What did you wish for? Jack smiled faintly. A way off this planet. Lysera gave a small laugh, one of the first real ones he had heard from her. It was soft, unsure, but real. He looked over. What about you? If your sky granted wishes, what would you ask? She hesitated. The firelight reflected off her eyes, making them glow. To not be the last. Jack didn't say anything. He didn't need to. They sat beside the fire, the sacred sword lying between them. Lysera removed parts of her armor slowly, piece by piece, until she wore only the soft layer beneath it. Not out of vulnerability, but exhaustion. For once, she wasn't the warrior princess. She was just someone trying to breathe. Jack followed her lead, removing his jacket. The cold alien wind blew around them, but the fire was warm. I hated you at first, she said suddenly. Jack raised an eyebrow. Charming. You were a stranger, she continued. You held my family's sword like it meant nothing, and I feared you'd ruin what little was left of my honor. Jack nodded slowly. And now? She looked down at the fire. Now I fear what happens if you leave. The wind carried her words away before Jack could answer. He stared at the flames, then said, Where I come from, we fight for people, not symbols, not ancient laws, just people. Lysera turned toward him. Then why are you still here? He thought about it. Because you fought beside me. Because you didn't run. And maybe... He paused, then added honestly, maybe because I want to stay. The fire crackled. Above them, the aurora shifted into a spiral. Lysera reached into her cloak and pulled out something small, a pendant carved in crystal. She handed it to him. This belonged to my mother, she said. It was worn by every bonded woman in our clan's history. I was supposed to wear it, but I think she'd rather I give it away freely. Jack took it gently. What does it mean? That I no longer see you as an outsider, she said, but as part of my path. He looked into her eyes, seeing something more than fire or war. He saw trust, pain, and the slow blooming of something like love. He reached across and took her hand. She didn't pull away. They sat like that, under the sky, the world quiet around them. Jack whispered, I'm not what you expected. Lysera nodded. No, you're better. A sudden howl echoed from the distance, cutting through the peace. Jack stood quickly, drawing the sword. Company? Lysera was already on her feet. Scouts, Dominion spies. They've found us. Jack clenched his jaw. So much for bonding by firelight. But before they ran toward the danger, Lysera grabbed his arm. If we live through tomorrow, I will honor the bond. Not for the law, for you. Jack smiled, tired but ready. Then let's make sure we get a tomorrow. Together they vanished into the night, blades in hand, no longer strangers, but something far more dangerous. A team. Return of the sword-bearer. They didn't arrive quietly. They marched in. The massive doors of the Varelian Council Hall exploded open with a thunderous boom. The wind howled behind them, scattering dust and broken banners across the polished floor. Jack entered first, his armor scratched, his shirt torn and the sacred sword glowing faintly on his back. Lysera walked beside him. Her face was cut, her eyes sharp and her aura undeniable. She was no longer just a warrior. She was a queen reborn. The room full of elders and former commanders fell silent. Some rose in surprise, others stepped back in fear, but none dared speak, until one voice cracked the stillness. You dare bring a human into our holy chamber armed and bonded? Spat Elder Kyreth, the oldest of the council. His voice echoed with anger and fear. This is a violation of a 1,000-year law. Jack calmly took the sword from his back and set it upright in the center of the hall, its tip touching the crystal floor. The runes beneath it began to glow. No law, Jack said softly, can stop what the sword itself has already chosen. Gasps followed his words. The sword reacted. Again. Its light reached the ceiling, triggering ancient carvings to shine with new life. Symbols of unity, of bonding, of prophecy. One of the younger council members stepped forward, trembling. The blade of Heartsteel accepts him. It's a trick, Kyrith barked. This outsider is corrupting our bloodline. Before Lysera could respond, Jack stepped forward. His voice was calm but strong. You think I want power? I didn't ask for this sword. I didn't come here to rule. I came here to protect her. And she, he turned to Lysera, chose to stand beside me, not because I was worthy, but because I was willing. Lysera stepped beside him, her voice cold and clear. Enough. The trials have ended. I passed my test, not as a daughter of war, but as a woman who dares to choose love over tradition. A sudden shout came from outside the chamber. A Varelian guard rushed in. We are under siege. The Dominion ship has landed. They brought soldiers, and they demand the human. Jack's grip on the sword tightened. Well, that explains the welcome party. Elder Kyreth's face darkened. Give him to them. End this madness. No, Lysera said firmly. We stand as one, and we fight. Jack turned to her. If I walk out there, they'll come. For me. But they'll burn the whole city trying. Lysera's hand touched his chest over the bond mark. Then let them try. Minutes later, the outer courtyard burned. Dominion soldiers in dark armor poured through the gates. Plasma bolts lit up the air. Varelian warriors fought back, but they were outnumbered. Then a voice rang out through the smoke. Calm, steady, human. Hey. Everyone turned. Jack stood at the center of the battle line, holding the glowing sword in both hands. Light pulsed from it with every heartbeat. You wanted the sword bearer? He yelled. Here I am. One of the Dominion generals stepped forward. Surrender it, or be destroyed. Jack didn't move. You're too late. With a shout, he charged. The battle exploded into chaos. Jack fought like fire, not with alien strength or years of training, but with heart. Every swing of the blade moved like it was part of him. Soldiers fell, machines sparked, and even Dominion elites couldn't break his defense. Behind him, Lysera led her people into the fray. The Varelians fought harder than ever, inspired by the human who stood without fear. Sword and heart became one. By the time the sun rose over the battlefield, silence had returned. The Dominion forces were retreating. Their flagship burned in the sky. Jack stood wounded but breathing, the blade still in hand. Lysera walked to him, dirt on her face, blood on her lips, and something new in her eyes. Peace. The sword chose well, she said softly. Jack smiled, weakly. Told you I wasn't just a tourist. Behind them, the Varelian people knelt. Not to a ruler, not to a warrior, but to the one who wielded the blade for love, not power. And just like that, a new legend was born. The return of the swordbearer. The human who changed a world. The battlefield had turned to ash. But from the ash, something new had begun to grow. In the heart of the Varelian capital, once cold and broken, flowers bloomed again. Strange glowing petals rose from cracks in the ground, reacting to something the planet hadn't felt in years. Hope. Jack stood on a balcony made of crystal and metal. Below him, thousands of Varelians gathered, silent and waiting. They weren't just citizens anymore, they were survivors, witnesses, and believers in the human who had held the sacred sword not for glory, but to protect a stranger. Now that stranger stood beside him, Lysera, no longer just the last daughter of her clan. She was their queen, and Jack was no longer just human. He had become something more. Earlier that morning, Jack awoke in a chamber made of light. Soft winds blew through hanging cloth. Lysera sat beside him, her armor gone, her expression soft and quiet. A small cut traced her cheek, a reminder of the war they just survived. I thought I'd wake up back in the forest, Jack muttered. Lost. Alone. Lysra smiled gently. You're not alone anymore. Jack looked at the sword resting against the far wall. Its glow had dimmed like it was finally resting too. So, he asked, what now? Am I supposed to wear a crown? Lysra tilted her head. There is no crown here. Only trust. Only bond. You don't have to rule them. Just stand with me. He hesitated, then nodded. That, I can do. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his, the mark of their bond glowing faintly on their skin. Then today, we begin again. In the great hall, the council stood waiting. Many of the old ways had been broken. The people had watched a human bleed for them, fight beside them, and challenge their traditions without ever asking for power. That changed things. Elder Kyreth, once Jack's loudest enemy, now stepped forward with a staff carved from bone and fireglass. He placed it between Lysra and Jack. By the witness of the stars, the sword, and the flame, he said quietly, the bond is sealed. No one cheered. Not yet. It was Lysra who stepped forward first, addressing her people. For too long, we followed rules written in the shadow of fear. But this man, this outsider, held our blade, faced our trials, and gave his body to protect even those who hated him. She paused, then held out her hand. Jack took it. We are not bound by blood, she said. We are bound by choice. The crowd stood still. And then, slowly, one hand rose in salute, then another, and another, until every Varelian in the court raised their hand in silent respect to the human who had become their own. Later that night, when the stars returned to the sky, Jack and Lysra walked through the quiet gardens together. The planet was still healing. Buildings needed rebuilding. Families needed comfort. But something inside the people had already changed. You really think this can last? Jack asked. Lysra looked up at the moons. It won't be easy. But easy things don't shape history. They stopped beside a statue being built, a new one. It showed a human and a Varelian warrior standing back to back, sword between them, heads held high. Jack stared at it for a moment. That doesn't look like me, Lysra smirked. It's not, it's who you've become. Then she touched her stomach almost without thinking. Jack noticed. Are you okay? She looked at him, and for once her proud voice softened to a whisper. I think we're not alone anymore. Jack blinked. Wait, do you mean? She only smiled and leaned into him. In that moment, under two alien moons in a garden that had seen both war and peace, a human and a queen stood together, not as legend and royalty, but as something stronger, family, and somewhere deep within, the old sword resting inside the palace. The runes glowed once more, because the prophecy had been fulfilled. The bond had been chosen, and the human had truly changed a world.